Hey guys, Alessio, hope you're well. So we've seen Bitcoin drop to the key support levels, which we anticipated. In fact, it's dropped down to the 38.2% Fibonacci retracement there, as you can see on the chart. That is a level, by the way, which we anticipated, we called for many weeks ago at the beginning of February. And also, it is not far away from this trendline support down here. And in fact, we go on the weekly chart, we can see that Bitcoin, has now tested that key level, which I always look for in my videos. And in fact, we called for this in the member videos for a drop down to the 21 weekly. We've now tested this level. The question is, what now? Could there be more downside? And what is the likelihood for Bitcoin to recover and potentially go back up again? How probable is that? All right, guys, so let's dig into the charts. Join me. All right, guys, welcome back. Now, before we dig into the chart of Bitcoin, I'm sure there's some people out there, I would say probably about 80 or 90% of Bitcoin enthusiasts out there who are looking at this chart of Bitcoin with shock and surprise, because obviously they haven't watched our previous videos, so they were not expecting this drop. And as a result, they're probably thinking something like this.
That is a fact!
Little bastard!
He does it
done it again! You dirty bastard, you've done it again!
Yeah, I gotta love that lead, judges. Every time I see that video, I smile. Anyway, so I mean, a lot of people were caught by surprise because of this drop, but we were not caught by surprise because you, as my intelligent viewers, you were prepared for this drop. In fact, let me show you what I've been saying in the last several weeks about the weekly chart of Bitcoin, and we'll come back. That has increased the likelihood that what we're dealing with here is a false break of resistance. And that means what we could be dealing with here. This could be an A wave down, A wave, and that would mean this most recent rally was a likely B wave. And as we know, B waves tend to be bull traps, especially if they take out resistance. And that means we could be dealing with a C wave drop and pullback into this region, approximately 91K to 90K to potentially even to the 87K region there. There is still potential for more downside risk here. I think the higher probability is for a test at 21 weekly moving average, which is now in this support region that I mentioned also last week, between 91K to about, I would say, 90K to 87K. So I think that the higher risk is for Bitcoin to come down and test at 21 weekly. And that I think is quite probable. I should say, as long as Bitcoin stays below 102,600, the first resistance, there is a higher probability for it to come down and test that near support between 90K to the 21 weekly moving average. All right, guys, welcome back, and thanks very much for watching that. So as you can see, Bitcoin has now pulled back to the very levels we had been anticipating. The 21 weekly, we're actually just below that level there. Let me just briefly show you this. This is a screenshot of my video from early February, from the 2nd of February. So as you saw in that video, we were calling for a drop down right into the support. The support now we've been testing, as a matter of fact, in this region. So that's the region, I'll just do a different color. So that's the region between 91K to 87K, okay? And we're just about here, as a matter of fact. So why? Why we're expecting that? Well, the answer is very simple, because of Elliott Wave theory. In fact, this is why Elliott Waves are so important, because they can guide us. And by the way, I know there's some people out there who said, oh, Alessio just calls it in every direction. So I know I've seen these comments before, where some people say, again, very ignorant comments. They say, oh, Alessio says it's going to go up and it's going to go down. So whatever happens, they can say he was right. Guys, that is the most insanely uneducated comment I've ever heard. First of all, the markets are probabilistic and uncertain. So we have to look at risk. That's why we look at it from different angles. But what I always do in my videos is I give you the probability. And I've said in my previous videos and member videos that this drop was more probable. It was much more likely. So we go back to the chart. So even though we're dealing with a chaotic and uncertain market, this drop here into support, as we have it here, into the 21 weekly moving average, was indeed the higher probability, and it was what we were expecting. By the way, let me also say this. I've noticed that a lot of the comments on social media on Bitcoin, especially right now in the last several days, have been very negative. I've seen probably the most negative and pessimistic and bearish comments on social media in the last few days. So a lot of people, I think, completely lost hope on Bitcoin. And it's not surprising, because usually when these big drops occur, like you see here, a lot of people do get scared and they get extremely pessimistic. But let me say this, that as I'm sure you know from my previous videos, to me, at the moment, this is a simple ABC correction. Okay, we're pulling back as we've been anticipating in a normal, healthy, in my view, ABC type correction. A wave, B wave, C wave into support. By the way, notice we reached a 100% projection of that A wave from the high to B wave, which is essentially that red line you see on my chart. That's the 100% projection of the likely A wave down. Okay, for those of you not familiar with what I'm talking about, if that's our A wave down, if that's the B wave high, the 100% projection would give us here for the C wave at just around 90K or 89,997. And the 1382 extension, the 1382 Fibonacci extension, if it continues to push lower, would be about here. That's about 82K if the price of Bitcoin continues to push lower. All right. And by the way, notice that we're not that far away from the trend line support either, which is approximately just under 87K. And you can see why 87K is important, because that's the 38.2% Fibonacci retracement of the rally that started from the September lows that we had last year all the way to the highs before the A wave down started. And let's go on the weekly chart. Yeah, there it is. So Bitcoin has also tested the level which I always have on my chart. That's the blue line on my chart at just near 90K. Okay, that's the 21 weekly moving average. By the way, in case you're wondering, what is this other line I have down here as a 34 weekly moving average? That's really important too, because usually when the price of Bitcoin does not hold the 21 weekly, well, the next support becomes the 34 weekly moving average. And also, the next support would be the 200 daily moving average, which is the green line right there. Okay, meeting us about the same level. That green line, by the way, meets us about the same level at approximately the 132 extension. That's important as well to keep in mind if Bitcoin should push further lower. Okay, so far so good. Now let's go on that weekly chart, and I want to explain to you that actually, even though this drop on Bitcoin does look pretty bad, especially when you look at it from sentiment perspective and also from this chart, let me show you this. I think this will put things in a better perspective. Now, this is a chart of Bitcoin from 2016 all the way to 2018. Well, I should say 2017 to the end of that year. Notice that in a bull market, and I think Bitcoin still is in a bull market. We discussed this with Charlie Burton just recently, if you saw my previous video. So Charlie Burton is right. I think we're still in a bull market in Bitcoin. And all we're seeing is something that's happened many times in bull markets, which is price goes higher and then pulls back to the 21 weekly. It did it here in 2016, all right, and it did it here in early 2016 here as well. Okay, so notice it pulls back to the 21 weekly, like here, holds, and then boom, rallies higher. Sometimes you can see, sometimes it pulls back even further lower, like it did here. Also in an ABC correction, as you can see, ABC correction here. It pulls back to the 21, let me just get my other color pen here. It pulls back to the 21 and 34 sometimes, holds it, and then boom, it rallies again. Then it pulls back again to the 21, sometimes the 34, and then boom, goes higher again. Then it pulls back to the 21 and the 34 sometimes again, and then boom, goes higher again. And notice again, over here, pulled back in an ABC correction here in 2017. All right, pulled back to the 21 weekly moving average there, and then boom, goes up higher again. Pulls back to the 21 weekly, and then boom, goes higher again. Okay, you get the picture. So guys, in a nutshell, I think if Bitcoin is in a bull market, then we should not be surprised when after such strong rallies like we saw over here, then it's indeed, when Bitcoin moves too far, too fast, then it usually pulls back again in an ABC three-wave, as you can see here, three-wave correction to the 21 weekly. And of course, if Bitcoin does continue to push lower, then as we've been saying, it may indeed test the 34 weekly as the next support. But it ideally needs to hold these levels. Here's the bottom line, guys. If Bitcoin is going to continue the bull market and go and see new highs, which is a possibility and even a probability, then it must be able to protect this zone, which means it must not drop in a sustained way below the 34. Okay, because if it does that, then it becomes less likely for us to continue the bull market. So, in other words, guys, in simple terms, if Bitcoin does continue to push lower, if we see more downside pressure, which is possible, it must be able to protect this 34 weekly. So we must not get a sustained move below that. It must be able to hold that. Otherwise, Bitcoin could be in a lot of trouble, and a sustained move below support or key support would make it less likely for us to continue the bull market. My view is quite simple. As long as Bitcoin stays above key support and as long as the stock market remains above key support, by the way, I've covered these levels in the member video, so make sure you go ahead and watch that. So the bottom line is, guys, I think as long as Bitcoin stays above key support and as long as it can protect, I would say, this zone here between the 21 and 34, the odds are higher for it to continue the uptrend in the next several months, likely to the summer of this year. That still seems much more likely to me. So I'm still remaining, as I said, I'm still remaining cautiously optimistic and bullish, despite this pullback, which I think is a normal and, again, typical pullback we see in uptrends. Let's wait and see if Bitcoin can hold on to this trendline support here. Can it hold this trendline support, or will it break it with force? That's one question we don't know yet. What about the 200 weekly moving average, which is this green line? Will it hold that support, or will it break it with force? Again, we don't know that just yet. To me, this is a pullback. Again, an ABC correction, as I've said before. I think it's an ABC correction, as we've been expecting, as I mentioned in the previous member videos, to support levels. And that's what I'm seeing at the moment on the chart of Bitcoin. So at the present moment, I don't see any evidence of a top. Now, if Bitcoin was to break down below key support levels, and if the stock market also confirms that by breaking key support, then we'd have to change our minds. But at the moment, there is no evidence of a top at this present moment. Okay, all we're doing here, as I've said, and I know I'm repeating this point here, all we're doing is pulling back to the expected levels at the 21 weekly moving average and potentially 34 if it sees more of a drop. All right, guys, just want to say a couple of things before I finish. Firstly, if you haven't yet subscribed to our videos here on YouTube, then please do so. Just click the subscribe button and enable notifications so you can be notified of future video updates. Also, for much more detailed analysis of Bitcoin and the stock markets and gold, also going to Elliott Wave theory as well, check out our member video updates. And of course, if you're not a member, go ahead on that link you see right there. Thanks very much indeed. Bye for now.